So we're going to talk about ghost cities. Looked into this and I found some interesting, I don't know, facts for me. Maybe they might be for you. So what we're talking about here is China. Um, you know, the Chinese culture is one of strategy, philosophy, and I've never read in history where I've ever really seen the people of China ever do something that doesn't really have an end game. That's just how they think, and that's how they are. It's the brilliancy of China. So we all know population there is about 1.4 billion. Next one behind that is India. It's obviously well populated for the size of the country. So when we think about ghost cities here in the United States, we have an image here created by Hollywood of ghost towns. These are towns in the western part of the United States that were either part of a gold rush, some other mineral, and these towns would spring up literally overnight. And, as soon as the gold vein ran out or whatever mineral it was, so did the town. But this is not the same as what we think about. No, we're talking about cities here, modern cities that have complete infrastructure. We have cities that in US dollars, the amount of investment is in the billions, but yet there's a mystery behind here. Now, I didn't know this, but there are at least 20 of these ghost cities in China. Had no idea that there were this many. And oddly enough, there are plans for hundreds more to be built. In one article I read, they were wanting to build at least 20 of these metroplexes. It's just mind-blowing when you think about it. So here are a couple of the ghost cities that have been identified. Dantu, and trust me, I am not going to dishonor the Chinese by me trying to pronounce these. But nevertheless, here you go. Now, we're going to see a lot of the photos that have been taken from these particular cities, particularly, I believe it's Dantu and Jingzhou. Those are the ones that I have, and also Otis. I have one of those as well. Now, the thing about these cities, as I said earlier, they not only have complete infrastructures, but they also have, oddly enough, different classes of neighborhoods. It's very bizarre. And the other thing I found really interesting is that in a lot of these cities, they are duplicates of other larger cities around the country. Don't know why, but I find that odd. Here's the Eiffel Tower. Weird, isn't it? And many of these cities are built thousands of miles from any other population centers. That's just weird. You have to admit, that's just weird. I read in one article that in some of these cities, many of these homes, these high rises, are completely furnished, but they don't have any people in them. And they're not stopping. They seem, in many cases, to build the structure, the shell of it. In other words, build the bones, set up for where you can begin to do the finishings. Again, even just doing the shells requires a huge, huge investment. And as I said, some are furnished and some are not, but there are no people. Many of these cities would be the same size of, let's just say, the downtown Dallas area. The high-rises are obviously multi-story. You can see in many cases these are 10, 15, 20-story high-rises. And there's no shortage of them. None at all. It's the most bizarre thing I've seen for a government to build these buildings. Now, in this case, here's a business district, but there's nothing in them. I mean, I had an idea that maybe the Chinese government could begin to rent these out to the movie studios of the world. Talk about having a set already custom designed. Look at this. When I saw these buildings, I don't know how many of you have been to Las Vegas, but, you know, got a lot of the very similar buildings like this. And you can see the infrastructures are there, but there's no people. And again, you have to ask yourself, why? Why spend this kind of money? I mean, at some point in time, you have to say, is there going to be an ROI to this? But you just have to admit, in some of these cities, they do have recent, like someone comes in and updates the billboards. I don't know why. But you can see for yourself, they're huge. I mean, this is like being in parts of like Houston. You know, you get in the Southwest Financial District, you're in the downtown. It's the same thing. And they're never stopping. They continue to carve out large property, large parcels of land. And in this case, you have the French theme. I don't know why. I look at this, and these are all modern buildings. One would have to think there would be a reason, right, for this. Not really sure. But there is something that is changing. Again, none of these buildings are occupied. Some, as they say, are completely furnished as though that they give the appearance that people are supposed to live there. And the building continues. I never realized as well as to the amount of construction that you can see that is taking place. I mean, China is a very wealthy nation. Interesting that you have a communist ideology in government embracing capitalism, which is definitely a Western ideology. They seem to be managing it very well. And when you think about the major cities, they don't have enough room. I mean, it seems like no sooner is a building built, right? They have to tear down another one to increase the size and to continue to go up. It's paradoxical in its approach, because in one report, they estimated that if you combine just the current ghost cities that are built out there, right, that they could literally house tens of millions of people. I don't fully understand it. And when you think about the amount of construction workers that it requires, there's really little evidence of where they're staying. CNBC found it to be very bizarre. Why? And what's really even more weird is that the fact that they have places of worship. Now, the Chinese government is anything than kind to religion, but yeah, and as you can see, these are huge high-rises, folks. I mean, it would be the envy of any city of the world. And sometimes you have one of these cities next to a city, and that city is packed with people, but you've got this. It's beyond sometimes my ability to think about this logically. And then you'll have where there's no lights at all in these cities, right? But you'll have one of these things, like public square or something. Again. And when you see such, listen, this is just beautiful architecture. And it's empty. You have events in some of these cities where it's almost like they're putting on a public show, but there's no one there. And you have a mixture of both the quaint and the mega building. Again, there is no shortage. As I said, if we had this kind of construction in the United States, oh my God, are you kidding me? I mean, the United States would be completely debt-free. We would be able to pay back not only the $20 trillion that we're in, but we would probably be able to take down a lot of the unfunded mandates. Because this is incredible. The scale is beyond most people's comprehension. And here's what I'm talking about. You have them built out in the middle of nowhere. And plans to continue to build. You have prime buildings set up along water property. Yet, no one's there. And one of the things I found out when you look at their concepts, they do it. I mean, they actually go out and say, all right, this is the idea of how we're going to build this. Look at this. How many construction workers do you think of the trades on this one alone? I dare say a couple thousand, wouldn't you? But then when you begin to add this, you see this, and it's repeated over and over. They got grapevines growing through the middle of some of these cities. I mean, here's one that's the beach, and you can see where it's blocked off. But why? And they're colorful. I mean, you have to admit, now I don't know what the difference of being in the orange zone to the yellow zone or the green zone or blue zone, but the infrastructures is the envy, again, of every American city. And then you get this. Thousands of these. Again, the shells. They build them and then they sit there. How about this one? I guess this is one of the old school people because they're not moving. But sir, we have a road to put through here, like hell. And then I guess that it becomes a movement because no 4-lane highway is going to stop this. This is my house, damn it. And here again, look at this. I mean, I don't know if this is just a colossal waste, or is there a long-term project, or is this a financial bust? I mean, that could be a reason, right? But then when you get the satellite photographs and the imagery showing you that they're building and building. Some of these cities have complete opera. They have the arts. It's perfectly designed. Sports arenas. But here again, I've seen much of this here in the United States. I mean, when you look at these, obviously you have the old with the new, but this is the problem. They have such a lack of critical housing in so many of the cities, but then you've got these cities that sit empty. I mean, 60 Minutes did a great piece on this. And the guy that was doing the story was like, well, what's up with this? And I agree. What's up with this? I mean, you spend the money, the time to build the buildings, the infrastructure, even the landscaping. Now, I thought this one was really odd. I mean, seriously, these here in America, depending on what city you can live in, if this were California, these are multi-million-dollar homes. Look at this. And there is no shortage of construction. It just continues. But you got no people. I mean, I don't think you have to fight over a parking space here. Again, look at this. These villas. Waterfront property, the whole bit, but they sit empty. Almost reminds me of that movie of Omega Man. And they do have transportation to them. I mean, they got rail lines. You can see that this one hasn't been used because it's never on time. But again, the infrastructure there is alone. And here in the United States, this is a real big problem with our infrastructure. Look at this, folks. This one really just, all these are empty. These are all empty. And they've got malls. Modern day malls that you could see in virtually any other place. Empty. I mean, maybe this is a real estate bubble. I don't think so. And again, the color codes. Is this something? I don't know. Now, this is what's really odd, is that there are many of these cities that are exact replicas of other cities in Europe. I mean, this could be anywhere. Europe, America. Now, this is what's odd. Something has changed. Because in some of these cases, people are actually moving in. But when you compare that you've got villages that would remind you if you were in Switzerland, signs, I mean, it's very, very different. Kind of reminds me of the series they had back in the 70s, The Prisoner. This is what I think about. Because there's no one in there. Not one person. So my question is, are the Chinese planning for something that they would have in these places, cities, in the event, let's say, of a man-made disaster, earthquake, tsunami, asteroid hit, firestorms? The question I ask myself, what is China planning for? Do they know something that maybe the rest of the planet should know about? I don't know. But it's definitely worthwhile thinking that if they're planning ahead, maybe all of us should be planning ahead. All right, folks, be kind to one another.